And a very big hello, everybody. Welcome along to another round of the Schumaker series. This is round 4 of the championship that the Viking currently leads over Rico Nosberg. Then we go back to Hickey Cat, C-Savs, V-Ducks rounding out the top 5. But it's only early days, as you can see by the calendar. A lot of racing to be done and a lot of fun to be had. Today we are here at Imola, and by all reports at this stage, we're thinking it may well be a sunny day. Let's hope the rain gods are on our side. A difficult track in the dry, but in the wet I think it'd be extremely demanding. I'm not flying solo in today's commentary session. I've dragged along a friend of mine who, in another league we race in, is not only a very fierce competitor, but is also part of the stewards panel. So we can lean on him for some expertise. You guys know, some of you know him. We've raced with him before in World Series. We're a boy. Good evening, sir. How are you?
Good evening, Mr. HK. How are you doing today?
I'm not doing too bad. Look, I got to tell you, I'm always doing well when I'm invited along to do a commentary session for the Schumaker series, because these guys are legit. They go very, very hard, and the racing is generally very good at a high standard. And more importantly, for people like us sitting up in the commentary box, very competitive.
Yeah, I think once you have people driving with no assist, you really see who rises to the top of the top, the creme de la creme. As one-shot qualifying gets underway, a lot of the drivers have set themselves up for a good exit down the main straight. DRS Open, the first and only one of the DRS zones around Imola.
Now I'm going to focus on a driver that you know because you've raced against him. Deku on board the Aston Martin is currently down in third at the end at the start of this one-shot qualifying. He's going to be very competitive here, but also people like C-Savs is going to be absolutely on the gun, you would think, racing for a team you raced for this season too, Red Bull Racing, so I know you're passionate and biased about that.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm not going to hide my bias. If I drive for Red Bull, I will support Red Bull.
It's hard
But
not
in
to,
the
isn't
interest
it?
of fairness, absolutely. But in the interest of fairness, I am a guest commentator. I will try to remain neutral, although I'm not going to promise anything at the moment.
Well, of course, we've got the one-shot qualifying just getting underway, and the times will start flashing up on screen very, very quickly as we get set for what should be an interesting weekend of racing, not only here in the Global Racing League, but also out on track for the real deal. The boys are going to be out at the Hungarian Grand Prix this weekend, a Grand Prix that's under debate at the moment as to whether it's going to stay on the calendar. We'll talk about that more a little bit later on. C-Savs goes to the top of the timesheets, 1:16.25. Deku second quickest, and everybody has completed their line and their qualifying run, and it's going to be C-Savs that's going to take provisional pole. There is confirmation of the details on your screen right now. In fact, C-Savs over Deku, V-Ducks, A-Lock, DJ Millsy doing a good job, Millsy, my former teammate, good to see. The Viking actually qualified. He doesn't qualify very often, Werribee. He likes to come from, I was going to say behind, but I'll just go with the back of the pack. It sounds better. Then we go to Cheeky Otter, Sinker, Hickey Cat, Otens, Ronaldinho, and Rico Nosberg sitting there. All those three, Otens, Ronaldinho, and Rico Nosberg, all being disqualified.
I mean, yeah, the track limits around Imola are very difficult. Once you go off just a tiny bit, the game will invalidate your entire lap. So not a surprise to see a few invalidations. I did see a few drivers run wide during the lap, but I think they lost enough time that the game didn't invalidate them. But look at the front three. There's only 2 tenths between the front three drivers. I think there was only half a tenth between Deco and our pole sitter. So I think it's going to be a very interesting sprint race as we see the different techniques. Who's going to play it long and go for the move at the end? Who's going to burn the battery towards the beginning and get the positions as early as possible? So we'll see what happens.
What excites me is I can see clouds in the sky. Now, whether that develops into rain or not, and we know in this game, rain is just so, how can I put it? Chunky?
Unpredictable.
Well, yeah, you don't. The difference between intermediates and wets, just looking at the ground, is almost indistinguishable. Um, and it can be really tough. Anyway, let's see. Off they go on their warm-up lap, which is something that's new to, if you've just joined us this season in global racing. We never used to do the warm-up lap, but because there is now full immersion in drivers setting themselves up on the grid, um, they've introduced it this year. The only caveat I put on top of that, and Werribee, you'll know what I'm talking about here, the number of times it's come up on screen that I've been disqualified because I didn't get in my box, yet I'm perfectly in my box in the purple in my car. A little bit of a bug in the game. So if they come up as being disqualified on screen up in the top left-hand corner, you might not always take that as being gospel.
Absolutely. The track limits in the game are a bit buggy. I think a lot of people know that already. So there might be a few issues with the grid boxes. There's the jury's still out on that one. But if you do get disqualified from the session, it's important to note that you lose all of your tire temperature. So you will be starting the race at 70 degrees, which is going to be very difficult because then you're going to be very likely to lock up into turn one. And as we know, first turn lockups are not just a danger to you, but the rest of the drivers.
I was so happy was it last Monday when they fixed the tyre warming issues at the end of these warm-up laps. In the lead up to this, if you're not a regular game player, you may not know that in the lead up to this, even though the guys were weaving around and trying to get temperature into their tyres, it didn't always hold after you were down and placed on the grid, but now it does. And it was so nice to start with warm tyres this week. I was just like, all my birthdays had come at once.
Absolutely. I mean, just having the assurance that you're actually going to have temperature, that's just, I'm not sure. I mean, if you've driven without the tire temperatures, you know that having the tire temperatures there is just so much nicer. So having that certainty that you will have the 90-degree tires,
It's a lot said too, Werribee, about these games and whether they're close to reality. Having driven Formula 3s before and Formula Holdens, I can guarantee you that the one thing that is absolutely replicated well is cold tyres. It feels like, in a real open wheeler, like you are driving a block of flats on cold tyres. You've got very little control over the car. You run wide every corner. You can't brake. The game has replicated that really well. Let's see how they go. 11 laps on the sprint. We are set. Lights come on. 2, 3, 4, 5. And we are go, 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 go. Terrible angles they've given us this year for the starts of races, which now we get to the pointy end. CSAV still leads over VDux, but VDux putting down the challenge, tries to go around the outside into turn one. Does he make it stick? He does. He goes through to the lead, relegating CSAV's back to second, and right behind him, VDux in the Williams trying to find a way past. A great start, and DJ Millsy up into fourth.
Yeah, that was a great start by Deku. He just seemed to get right on the clutch as soon as the lights went out. He made a very good start, got a very good exit into turn one. He left perfect racing room, but at the back of the grid, Sinka was suffering on the cold tires. He disqualified himself driving into the pit box. So of course, he's going to be struggling around in sector 2 as he just tries to get the temperature into the tires.
As you can see at the moment, Rico Nosberg having a look at him, trying to find a way past, sticks it up the inside as the McLaren runs a little bit wide, and he moves forward into 11th spot and now sets his sight on the second of the McLarens to be driven by Otens today.
Yeah, he's a bit close in the slipstream of the Ferrari. The slipstream is quite powerful in this game. Those of you who've played 21 know that it wasn't that powerful last year, but this year it has been increased. So that gives us a bit more old school racing as we go into lap 2. No DRS until lap 4 here at Imola because of course the detection zone is in the previous lap. So we'll have to wait until lap 4. At the moment, the drivers are just going to be using their battery and using slipstream to make up positions. As you see, Deku.
Yeah, Deku's gone back into the race lead. While we were looking at Rico Nosberg, CSAVs was able to find a way past. I've got a brand new wheel here, so I'm going to try and work out how to bring up... here we go. Here we go. Let's go telemetry. Let's go lap times. Let's go track map. Scary on a new wheel. You don't know which button to push.
Of course,
We've got it. We've got it.
teething issues. But at the moment, it looks like CSAVs and Deku are just holding onto the battery. CSAVs has a little bit more than Deku, so Deku might be trying to break that DRS, but he's only 4/10 ahead of CSAVs. Behind, you see DJ Millsy in the Red Bull, just dropping slightly further back Vidux, just out of DRS, and A-Lock as well, joining that lack of pace, should I say, dropping out of the DRS zone. Imola is quite powerful with the DRS. You do gain a lot of time down the main straight because it is a high downforce track, so losing that letterbox, or rather opening that letterbox in the rear wing, does gain you a lot of speed and a lot of time. Deku unsurprisingly sets the fastest lap. He is in the clean air.
And a good little fight going on for 6th, 7th and 8th at the moment. Hickey Cat, Cheeky Otter, and at the head of that little pack is the Viking, who's under a bit of pressure from the two Ferraris at the moment. Hickey Cat deciding on whether he should have a go at Mein Kampf, our Führer, our leader. could be worse for wear. No, Viking's not like that, but it's always good to ham it up a little bit too, right?
Yeah, you don't want to take out the league leader, otherwise you might get yourself a cheeky ban. Just kidding. But all's clean so far. Everyone's kept their noses clean. No damage, no carbon flying, so I think a lot of the drivers are playing the long game, because it doesn't matter if you lead lap 1 to 10, it matters where you are at the end of lap 11.
It's funny you mentioned the long game. We're looking at DJ Millsy at the moment, and I know this because he's a former teammate of mine when we raced together in my first season at the Mansell Series. He loves his tactics, and he's always very patient behind the wheel, and it's resulted in him getting some really solid podiums and really solid performances throughout the seasons that he's been racing. Just that stay calm, let the race come to you sort of attitude.
Absolutely. Patience is rewarded in racing. Patience is always rewarded. It doesn't matter how aggressive you are on 1 or 2 of the laps, because that just means that if you go too aggressive, burn out all your battery, you're left defenseless in other areas of the track. So it's always good to remain patient, take care of the tires. Another thing that I think I forgot to mention earlier were the starting tires. So everyone on the grid is on the mediums, with the exception of GR the Viking on the hard tire. But just looking back towards the grid, I think Ronaldinho's had a bit of an incident. He may have clipped one of the curbs, and unfortunately he's at the back of the grid now. He's lost a bunch of time, and given how short the sprint race is, it's unlikely to be able to make that up. But you never know what could happen. It could be a late safety car. It could be anything.
I'm glad you brought up the tyre issues, because the Viking being bold, he's gone for the hards. That's why Hickey Cat and Cheeky Otter are just pushing him down the track almost at the moment. But as this race progresses, it was funny because Viking and I just an hour ago were having a talk about how I love the hard tyres, because while they may not be quite as fast as the mediums, they're way more consistent. You don't get caught out quite as often as you do with particularly the softs, and to a degree also the mediums as well. That step off, that jump down the ladder between performance and no grip is nowhere near as dramatic. As now he comes under pressure as Hickey Cat tries to find a way past, can't do it. It's putting him under pressure, looking left, looking right. He's going to have to stay in situ at the moment. Is he? No, he's going to go down the inside into the left-hander, and he gets the overtaking manoeuvre done, and his teammate tries to go around the outside but runs wide and is going to lose 2 or 3 spots as a result. He goes back behind Rico Nosberg. Now Oten's right up behind the Viking.
That was an absolutely beautiful move from Hickey Cat there in the Ferrari. He set up the move 4 corners before, just making Viking go defensive into turn 1. So he got the switch back into turn 4, which gave him a really good run down into the second chicane, which he left good space. It was very clean racing. I'm very proud to see all the drivers making it through such a narrow circuit. And
you and I were having a chat off commentary about Hickey Cat as the Viking now gets taken by Oten's. Oten's moves forward, and the second of the Ferraris, Cheeky Otter's going to try and stick around the outside. He'll have the inside running down into this next turn. Oh, I've lost him. Here we go. No. Yes, he's got past. He's been able to get past the Viking. I was talking about Hickey Cat with you out of the commentary box, and he is my benchmark, because the guy is just so quick, and just be able to stay with him, it's all I want to do. I don't even need to be able to overtake him to feel like I've won a Grand Prix. I just need to stay with him. And problems for the Viking. He's had an off-track excursion, and he's going to go back to second last.
That's unfortunate. He just had a bit of a clip of the curb, and of course, once you do unload one of the tires, it becomes very, very easy to lock them up. So this is the Schumacher division. This is the division with no assist. So this is just pure skill. So if you get unlucky, if you get caught out like the Viking just has, I think you get spins. But he was losing positions even before the spin. The hard tires were just not doing him any good. He was just getting overtaken, getting pushed by the cars behind him on the faster, softer compound. So I think the Viking would probably be not enjoying his strategic decision, but obviously this isn't the end of the race. This is the next race. We've got, I believe, 33 laps of the race to come, so it's not over yet for him.
Now, there's a great battle going on up in front between CSAVs and Deku. Deku with the DRS, he's going to get the run down the inside and a very clean overtaking manoeuvre. Oh, problems further back in the field. Otens, Rico, Alok, they've all gone out. Those three were all nose to tail a few moments ago. And is that the Viking that's pulled over to... No, that's Rico Nosberg. There goes the Viking trying to weave his way through the carbon fibre. Sinker's been able to keep going. There's a safety car has come out onto the track now, so a full course safety car has come out as three drivers have exited this race in tragic style in the final turn. I was just about to say that CSAVs and Deku were having a great battle, but Alok was starting to come under pressure from the drivers behind him, and just as I went back to look, we saw that there was absolute carnage.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what happened there. I just looked back in the camera and there was just a showering of carbon fiber everywhere and a few dead cars. So it remains to be seen what happened. We'll have to investigate that after the race and look for POVs of the incident. But at the moment, pit stops, GR the Otter, Ronaldinho, both stopped. I think they were involved in the incident and had wing damage. So they're going to be on the soft tire. It remains to be seen if any other drivers are going to take the risk with the pit stop. It all depends what the rivals are doing up ahead. So drivers like Cheeky Otter will have the opportunity to have the softer compound for the last 4 laps, and I think they're going to be a driver to watch coming into the last 3 laps of the race.
We'll keep looking back and seeing if anyone does decide to pit. Yeah, Hickey Cat has gone in out of 5th spot. I dare say he will be going for the softs. Cheeky Otter's got the softs on. Ronaldinho has got the softs on. Let's see. Yep, softs going on for Hickey Cat, and a new front nose cone as well. So obviously the choice to pit was not so much his and more the fact that he had mechanical damage that he didn't want to race with, especially around here. Wirraboo, you've probably had more laps around this track than I. Areas that you like of the track and areas as a driver you don't like?
I think a lot of what you do end up liking and don't end up liking depends on the setup of the car. So I'm a man who usually likes to run lower downforce, so naturally I prefer Sector 1 because there's a long straight and a few high-speed corners. But I think I do enjoy Sector 2 the most. I think the technical corners you see, there's the fast left-hander that's leads up into the Aqua Minerale chicane. So I think Sector 2 would be my favorite. My favorite corner overall would be the forgive me, I'm not sure about the turn number, but the last chicane in Sector 3 before going into the DRS detection zone. So I think that's a very good one if you get it right. You have to flick the wheel to the left and flick the wheel to the right to get it onto the sausage curbs to gain the right amount of time. Of course, if you take them wrong in these cars that are very low with the Venturi tunnels, you will bottom out, you will lose a lot of time. So
It is one of those, that's the chicane we're talking about right there on the screen. It's one of those sections of the track where if you're not on the limit, you lose time, and if you step over the limit, you'll lose front wing and potentially wheels off your car. But if you're not pushing it through there, you can lose like 0.3 of a second in that turn. No drama at all. So it sort of beckons you to have a go, but you still have to be cautious at the same time, which is sort of a contradiction in terms, I know, but it's also factual.
it is. We saw Charles Leclerc get it all wrong during the Imola Grand Prix, or rather the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix earlier this season, where he just sent the car a little bit too hard, pushing a bit over the limit as he was chasing down Verstappen. So he got it right every single lap before, but just that one mistake, that one error he made, made him go into the wall, lost him his wing, and unfortunately he finished P6 when a win was on the cards for him. So it all depends on just the fine margins of how you go into the corner. If you get it wrong, if you go in a bit too narrow, it ruins your line on the exit and you end up on the curb or you end up invalidating. So it's a tricky corner to get right, and I'm sure most of these drivers know that.
Well, Deku leads over CSAVs, V-Dux, DJ Millsy and Sinker rounding out the top five. And if you think you are a better pilot than Deku, if you think that you could outdrive him, why not head off to the Global Racing League Facebook page and join up and come along and have a little bit of fun and play. There's always seats coming up and available, particularly in the reserve ranks. So if you think you'd like to have a go, pop along to the Facebook page, pop off a message to the Viking, and I'm sure that he'll do his best endeavours to find you a seat. Looks like the safety car will be probably, it's in this lap. There's confirmation from race control. So Deku now has the pace, and this is the part I hate, because this throttle lock stuff drives me absolutely batty. And if the front driver gets throttle lock, everybody gets throttle lock. You can be 3 seconds, 4 seconds behind the car in front and you get throttle lock, which just... So it encourages you to get really close to the guy in front, but you don't want to get too close, because if he jumps on the brakes, you've lost your front wing. Let's see what Deku can do on the restart. Where a boy.
He doesn't have to go until the finish line, but I think he wants to go early now. He wants to be able to break the slipstream. He gets a pretty good launch, no wheel spin, and all the other cars are going to be chasing. But ones to watch would be the soft runners, that they just have so much more grip. Another thing to note is that they won't have to warm up the tires as much because this compound is softer, so they might have more temperature. As we see them going for a move, the Ferrari just backs out towards turn 1, but he's going to get the switch back into turn 2 and 3, gets a bit squirrely on the exit, but he's going to have the run. He's deploying the battery in the slipstream, but I think he's just going to have to sit back and wait for the next opportunity. Of course, he does have the tires. Everyone else has been on those old mediums for the start of the race, but it's getting towards the end of the race. Everyone's going to be wanting to make those positions because they know that a good starting position in Imola for the main race will be crucial to getting a good result. But no overtakes thus far. Everyone's keeping it tidy.
One thing I've just noticed straight away, like Deku got a blinder of a start, 0.8 of a second by the time they got to turn 1. CSAVs has closed that gap, but take a look at his ERS. He's sitting on 99% CSAVs at the moment, and that is compared to 70% for Deku. So he's well and truly got this one in control, such as the speed of this guy.
An important thing to remember is that they both have the maximum deployment. It is a one-lap shootout towards the end, so regardless of how much they start with, they're going to have the same amount of deployment left because they can just dump all of the battery. This is the last lap, but I think CSAVs are just a bit too far back to have a look at Deku. Deku might be running the lower wings. He did gain a lot of time down the straight, even though CSAVs had that slipstream. But I think Deku, if he just keeps it clean, if he keeps it on the black stuff, he's going to take pole position for the race.
And all the soft runners further back in the field as Cheeky Otter gets a 3-second penalty for track violation limits. You can see all the soft runners. They haven't been able to make an impact on the mediums, but they're in a battle of their own at the moment, which could only be described as royale. It's on for young and old.
Royale. Absolutely. I would think that the soft runners would work together to try and get towards the medium runners and then fight, because the grip advantage they have is just incredible. Once you've driven on old mediums and switch over to new softs, you truly do feel how much nicer the car is to drive. So they're a bit further back. 0.3 is the gap between P5 and P6 and those tire compounds, but they might have another chance to just take a move into the last corner. It's going to be risky, but you've got to risk it for the biscuit, as you like to say, HK.
Yeah, Hickey Cat just about to have a go at Sinker. Looks to the inside, tries to get the overtaking manoeuvre done as Deku comes down across the line. Checkered flag at the ready. He takes out the sprint race over CSAVs, V-Dux. DJ Millsy will finish in 4th spot. Then a gaggle of them. Hickey Cat comes down across the line. I think he finished there in... DJ Millsy in 4th. So Hickey Cat, I think, finished in 5th. We'll get confirmation of that in a few moments' time. And Hickey Cat does pick up the drive of the day. Would you agree?
Absolutely, I would agree. I did see that last overtake, and I can confirm Hickey Cat did finish P5. he took the position at the very last corner of the sprint. So that tire advantage I did mention came in handy for him. So he's going to take P5 on the grid on the third row. But it was a very good fight from Viking. He didn't just sit down and take it. He did have the hard tire for the start of the race. So it was a very difficult stint. But that safety car with the soft tires did help him a lot to be able to maintain some sort of good position. So we'll see how he goes in the race.
Yeah, well, second last at one stage up into those finishing positions. Oh, and unfortunately, I can't give you the race director. There's a new bug in the game. That's all you can see. Unfortunately,
Ooh.
that's all we can give you. I saw this the other day in another stream. I think it was PSGL where they did the same thing. So, unfortunately, can't give you the race director, peeps. I know it's vitally important, especially if you've got track limits, but we can only do what the game will allow us to do. Now we go Grand Prix racing for the grand prize.
I cannot wait to see what happens. You've already been treated to very good racing in the sprint race, so I don't doubt that we're going to have good action in the full race.
And
But
it's
it is
raining. It's raining.
raining.
There's a God.
Oh dear.
I've always said that God was a Formula One fan. I have always said it. Speaking of which, while we're waiting for these cars to start their formation lap and they all desperately go, I don't have a wet setup, I don't have a wet setup. Grand Prix tonight, real world, Spa-Francorchamps. Who do you think's going to take the victory?
I think the mix-up grid is going to make it very, very difficult to predict, and I'm
Oh,
not sure
yeah.
about the weather. I think I've heard reports it might rain, and if it does rain, those Williams are going to be in a league of their own because, as you know, for some reason, unknown to me, the Williams seem to be quite good in the rain, and Alex Albon starting P6 with that straight line advantage he's got. I believe he was around 10 kilometers an hour faster down the Kemmel Straight than than the Red Bull cars. So that's going to be one to watch. I think the win, I don't think Verstappen should be counted out of the win. I think Verstappen's very capable of taking the win. We've shown in Hungary it wasn't last week, forgive me, but last race that he came from 12th or 11th on the grid to win the race. It was a combination of good strategy and good driving. So I think Verstappen, given the straight line speed advantage of the Red Bull, given how ferocious it's been this year, I think he could take the win. I don't have faith in Ferrari at the moment. I think their strategy is just letting them down. If you missed qualifying yesterday, spoiler incoming, they bolted new tires onto Leclerc's onto Leclerc's car to give Sainz a tow, which didn't make any sense. And because of that, they weren't able to fuel his car up for the second run in qualifying. So I think that qualifying session does sum up how Ferrari performed this year. I think they just uncoordinated. I think they could do better. They have the fastest cars, so the position they're in right now in the constructors championship is concerning to say the least. So I think Verstappen's going to take the win today. Long answer, but I think Verstappen wins.
Deku driving for Aston Martin in the Schumaker series. There's the car on screen at the moment. Over the next 6 months, you want to keep a close eye on the real world Aston Martin team. Of course, Lawrence Stroll owns that team, and Lawrence has pretty much run his Formula One team like the fashion world. Deku! You basically copy everyone, put out cheaper products, and do really well financially. Unfortunately, in Formula One, that hasn't worked, and they've redone their model, and basically he's been up and down pit lane, and he's... the term is stole, but, you know, hey, all's fair in love and war. Engineers from Mercedes, he's taken people from Red Bull, and I mean prominent people that really know their stuff. So don't be surprised if in the next 6 months or so you see some pretty big turnarounds from the Aston Martin team. Now, the Aussie dude and Noxie have been able to join in for this race. They weren't there for the sprint. Good to have them on board. Noxie always a lot of fun in the Alpine, and his teammate, the Aussie dude. Let's see how we go. 32 laps, 3 lights, 4, 5, rain, and the pedal goes to the deck. Let's see how they get away with this one. A clean start by the front row. I hate these camera angles they've given us now. Now we've got CSABs working his way up on Deku. Deku holds the line though. VDUX slots into third spot. He's happy to maintain that. One of the McLarens going wide and now comes under pressure from Rico Nosberg, and a problem for Sinker.
There was I saw that. I just switched cameras as that happened. I saw one of the Mercedes tag the back of the Ferrari that sent them both round, and unfortunately the McLaren of Sinka was just a passenger, nowhere to go, and ended up hitting the back of the Mercedes. So they are out of the race, turn two. So that's not a very good result for them. They had a good result on the sprint, but at the moment there's a full course safety car. Safety car is out. This is not a virtual. This is a full safety car. There's a few cars with damage, so. I do believe I'm correct in saying it was Otens and it was the Viking that were involved in an incident there. Not entirely sure what happened to cause the rear ending, but
Well, I can
uh,
I can tell you, where a boy, that the game, whether it's right or wrong, and that needs to be pointed out, as we see Cheeky Otter with the no nose cone, he'll have to go into the pits. The game gave the Viking a 5-second penalty for causing a collision with damage.
right, okay. So the game, I've been in that position before, and the game, the way it calculates that is, I believe
Badly.
it's to do with, yeah, badly. That's the way to say it, just badly. But I believe the speed difference between the cars is considered when calculating who's at fault. But obviously, a computer
Rico
cannot do a job as good as a human.
Rico Nosberg without a nose cone as well, so he'll have to do a little tour down in the pits. It won't cost them too much because the safety car is out on track, so he'll be coming in for a new nose. Now, I don't expect him to change tyres, but you never know. So, A-Lock, Cheeky Otter, Rico Nosberg and Ronaldinho are the ones that are in pit lane. There's the Haas of Eldinho with no nose cone as well, no front wing.
Yeah,
Just
right. They're all switching back onto brand new enters. So you have two enters available for the race. So that's the second set used. So obviously the first one won't have a lot of wear on it. So if there is a second safety car, they can switch back to the old used set. But at the moment, it's looking like it might be a fully wet race. Now, I'm not gonna commit to saying that the weather's gonna change, but according to my predictions, I do think it's gonna be intermediate for the rest of the race.
you've got the crystal ball out, eh? 2 laps down, 30 laps to go, one safety car already. It's it's turning out to be, and I can tell you that Noxie has just posted in the chat group that he's got the sound glitch. Noxie, if you're listening to the commentary while you're under safety car, go AI, switch your audio settings to the lowest possible, and that will fix it. It's not actually your car, it's the other cars around you that cause the glitch, and by taking it to the lowest setting, while it doesn't sound real good, it will alleviate your problem. I got to tell you, Werribee, having had that once, I retire. I cannot drive that car if I can't hear it.
Absolutely, because you have to know what the wheels are doing, and the sound is a very important tool in trying to figure out how much wheel spin you're getting and what car, what wheel. I'm sorry, my words are just not in my mouth today. This sounds very important in trying to figure out how much wheel spin you're getting and what gear the car is in, because a lot of these things are just done on autopilot. So you get into that state of mind where you're not actually driving, your hands are just moving and the car is just going where your hands are telling it to go. So having sound that actually is accurate to what the car is doing is important because it just gives you a lot of information that your eyes would have to look for manually. You'd have to look down and see what gear you're in. You'd have to look down and check the rev lights. So sound is important. I do sympathize with a lot of the drivers who are suffering from sound issues. So if any of them are listening, the best way to try and fix some of those issues is to go into your audio settings and change the audio simulation quality to ultra low. So you're not going to lose out on any quality per se. The game will sound as accurate. The game will sound as good as it does, but you're not going to have as much stuttering. You're not going to have that weird, revving sound that you get when you load into the game. So lap 3, safety car, just like in the real race. If you do remember back to Imola, the race started out with a first lap safety car after Daniel Ricciardo ended up hitting Carlos Sainz into the gravel. It is sad to see what's happened to Daniel Ricciardo over the last few years. Of course, as McLaren fan myself, I do have to say that I had hopes from Daniel Ricciardo, but I really hope that next season he has a seat because I think this season the car just wasn't made to suit him. I think we've seen before that once a team focuses on one driver and they make a car for one driver, it just becomes very difficult for the other driver to become comfortable. So, what are your thoughts on the whole situation?
I can guarantee you'll have a seat next year.
You can guarantee.
I can guarantee Daniel Ricciardo will be in Formula One next year. How's that for confidence?
Right. Interesting. Uh,
I won't
I would
be.
like to
I
get your
won't.
thoughts on
Yeah, I
that,
won't be
but
expanding
one of
on
the
that.
Mercedes, maybe we can have a chat after the stream, but I think it's important to mention that GR Rico Rosberg has DNF'd on the safety car. We just missed that, but outside on the exit of the final chicane, I'm not sure what happened. I think there might have been a traction loss, but they're
And
out of the
Hickey
race.
and Hickey Cat's out there on softs. He's gone softs while the safety car's been out. So the dice has been rolled. Hickey Cat is going to come out of pit lane on soft tyres. He believes the rain's going to stop and he believes he's going to have an advantage. Let's keep an eye on him as the safety car makes its way around the track and see if he is suffering a bucket load of understeer. We'll soon tell. They'll be cold, so it won't be that good for him at the moment. But if he can generate some, I don't know, see, it's always easier to stay out on slick tyres when it rains than it is to come out on slick tyres when the rain's giving up, because it's all about tyre temperatures, and you can't generate that tyre temperature as well as you can in the wet as you can in the dry. But he seems to be, well, he's getting a little bit of wheel spin there in the fourth gear, fifth gear, climbing the hill section of this track. Through here is always very difficult. Goes back to fifth. He's very tentative on the throttle, but he's not losing it. So his plan might be to just try and stick with the back of the pack. And as the race does dry up with the safety car coming in this lap, he will concede that he'll probably lose, 5, maybe 10 seconds in the first couple of laps, but perhaps that's going to be a better result for him than having to do a pit stop under green flag conditions.
I have to say, the engineer inside of me is saying it's a bit too early for the slick tire. I think in the long run, going to the slicks under the safety car would probably be the better decision. But at the moment, he's going to lose a few seconds of lap time to the other intermediate runners. But of course, he could gain all of that back up after they make their pit stops, because the track does seem to be drying quite rapidly. As CSAM dives into the pits immediately, I think he's seen the tracks drying out and he's not going to wait for anyone. I take everything I said back, as Hickey Cat has gotten the jump on GR Viking at the back of the grid, but ahead Deku is out on the inters, so he might want to deploy that battery and gain as big of a gap as he can.
I'm
The
not
track has literally dried out in the space of 2 sectors.
Yeah, that's
So
ridiculous, isn't it? It's crazy. And obviously a brilliant call, a masterstroke by Hickey Cat. Let's go back and see where he's at as Deku leads over VDux, Oten, CSAVs. He's gone on to hards. CSAV's gone to hards. Noxie's gone to mediums. DJ Millsy to mediums. I think mediums would be the call, but CSAVs I think is going to try and go to the end of the race, and the softs just have so much more grip at the moment. Hickey Cat's just carving them up. The Vikings just reported in that his car is completely broke. Now, I don't know if that's a technical term or what that's alluding to, but obviously the Viking not happy with something to do with his car. He did have contact, so maybe something in the under tray or something like that may be broken.
I think he may have gotten damage in that massive crash we saw in lap 1. So I think he might have some floor damage or some sort of sidepod damage, which does decrease your downforce, and it really does increase your drag. So you're not going to have a lot of straight line speed.
Race leader into the pits. Sorry, race leader comes into the pits as VDuck sets the fastest lap of a 1:23.1. Now let's see what Deku's going to go for. He has gone for the hards. Another safety car. Yes, we've got an Alpine. And I'm trying to pick up who that is. Might it be the Aussie dude? No, it's not the Aussie dude. My apologies. Noxie is in 12th and he's disappeared off our screen, so I can't show you, unfortunately. But our race leader is slowly making his way around to that section of the track. But I think the car will have despawned. Rico Rosberg says his car was undrivable.
Yeah, that's probably to do with the damage, because once you do lose floor damage with these generation of cars, it's just like losing, I'd say, probably 20% of your downforce, which just ruins the car balance. So you're going to have oversteer, you're not going to have any grip on the turn-in. So I do feel for them. So that damage is it's a race ending if you get it. So
Yeah. Now, this is interesting because VDUX, A-Lock, they're going to have to pit because it's a completely dry track. I got to tell you, before they did the tyre model update, if I was VDUX and A-Lock, I would have stayed out on intermediates on a dry track. You know why? Because in the PSGL race, Jana Watmir came in, got a brand new set of softs on in dry conditions, and the intermediates were pulling away from him on a dry track. But the tyre model has been fixed, so I don't recommend that now.
absolutely, you don't want to do that now.
A-Lock comes in. That means Cheeky Otter on those 3-lap-old softs is going to claim the race lead on lap number 7. VDUX will be right behind him on the hards by the look of it. Does anyone? Yep, no. Oh, here we go. Deku, straight through. He goes up into second. I think he said stuff the Delta and just went for it there. I would have too.
I think that is what happened. I saw him using the battery trying to get ahead of VDUX, but I have to say I'm not understanding the strategy call to go onto the softs, because if you do know that the rain's ending soon, if you knew that the rain was going to stop towards the end of the race, then going on the softs wouldn't make much sense unless you're planning to do a 2-stop strategy. Stretching the hards to the end is going to be a bit of a difficult task because they will be in puncture territory, but I think going onto the mediums or the hards during the safety car before would have been a better decision than the softs, because these tires are going to go off in about 5 or 6 laps from now.
Weru, the very lovable Rico Nosberg, has jumped into the Facebook chat and said, "Hey lads, Rico here, can't wait to watch the stream back." Basically, the entire back of his car was marked as red or orange on his PDF. Basically, the whole rear end of his car was destroyed, and that's why he has retired. Shame, my friend, you're a fast pilot. It's always much more fun having you out there on the track rather than in Facebook chat, but the season is only young, my friend. The season is only young, so I hope your luck changes. Hickey Cat on those softs with the safety car coming in this lap is going to set the pace. Deku is not going to let him get away. Obviously, Hickey Cat will get the jump, but how far can you take the softs here at Imola?
I think they only last around 6 to 7 laps. You do get 7% power per lap as Hickey Cat sets the field down the straight. Deku's using the battery in the slipstream, but I think he didn't get a very good launch, so he might not have a good run into turn 1 and 2. Looking back towards the field, VDUX was getting close to the McLaren of O10s, but at the moment everyone's just behaving. They do have more grip now, so you're going to see more overtakes. Overtaking in the wet is a bit difficult, but in the dry, expect to see a lot more movement up and down the grid.
And Lando Norris in the McLaren. I say Lando Norris because he's absolutely flying Otens at the moment. He's on the soft tyres. He got straight past VDUX and now is setting his sights on Deku. He's on 2-lap-old softs at the moment, so he's a little bit has a little bit more grip still left in the tank than does our race leader on those 4-lap-old tyres, but they're just gapping the rest at the moment. And Deku, it has to be said, on those hards is doing a pretty good job to fend off the attack of Otens and stay close to the back of Hickey Cat.
Absolutely, but I think you may have missed it, but Vikings went round just at the end of Sector 1. I'm not sure what happened there, possibly cold tires, not having enough grip towards the rear, but the Viking has gone round. Ronaldinho joined them just a few seconds later, so they're at the back of the grid. So there is a big gap between P6 and P5 where the Viking originally was, so that's going to affect the race because they're not going to be DRS there. So I think Cheeky Auto is going to want to push with the battery to try and get DRS so that they remain in contention for the top spots of the race.
It's amazing how often that happens, isn't it? You have one issue, then another issue comes up, then another issue, and it tends to snowball in this game, I've found. If you get a great start, big problems for Hickey Cat. He's gone round from the race lead and he's falling back through the pack. Did it on his own, just lost traction on the right-hander, maybe picked up a little bit too much of the ripple strip and the back of the car just snapped around. Deku picks up the race lead now and he has Otens all over him on those soft tyres. Deku with the upper hand because of the tyre compound he's got, but at the moment he's just trying to fend off a very determined McLaren.
Absolutely, that gap is just so close. It's been 3 tenths for the last 2 sectors, so I'm not going to be surprised if we see Oten deploying that battery going down onto the main straight to try get the move done. Because of course you want to take the advantage of the softs while they're still young. If you stay behind another car in a slower compound, you're not going to really gain a lot of race time. So it's going to be critical for Oten to try get the move done as soon as possible while those softs are faster than the hards.
And cheeky Otter on board the Ferrari, I don't know if he was hungry, but he tried to go through and steal somebody's lunch out of the grandstand. He was wide as Oates looks down the inside. Now they go side by side and almost touch. Deku manages to maintain the spot, but that was absolutely committed by Deku to shut that door, slam it in the face of Oates that time around, but Oates not done with yet.
Absolutely. That was very clean racing from the both of them. Good job to both drivers for keeping it clean. Oten just really wants that P1 really, really badly, but Deku is not going to let him take it off him very easily. So I'm not surprised to see that. Deku used to be my teammate in another league, so I know how he races. It's clean but fair. So I don't expect this battle to last for 1 or 2 laps. I expect it to go for as long as Oten's stays behind him on the softs.
And I don't know. Look, I've been in Deku's shoes or boots as it might be before, where you're on a harder compound of tyre than the guy behind you, and the guy behind you, why don't you let me pass? We're on a different strategy. No, get stuffed. I'm not going to let you pass. We're here to race, and every lap I hold you up, every lap that you can't get past me makes my job easier later on in the race to catch you up. He doesn't need to let him past. He can fight for it as long as he does it within the rules. Do you agree, Mr. Stewart?
I do agree, as long as you do fight within the as long as you do fight within the rules and keep it clean, like Oten's has just done, getting by Deku with the DRS quite easily. I think you can fight wherever you want to. I think there are situations where as a driver you have to say, okay, this isn't my fight. I'll get him later on in the race. But anything could happen. The safety car could happen that brings the strategies back together. So it just depends on the kind of driver you are. If you like to fight, go ahead and fight. But if you like to play the long game and play for race time and not track position in the moment, then I think you can do whatever you want.
See, to me, and my way of thinking, and you know I love my strategies, my way of thinking is I am playing the long game by holding you up. Because now, Oates has got 5 laps on those soft tyres. If you had to let him pass on lap 1 or lap 2 after the safety car came in, the guy would have been, on 6-7 seconds down the track. Now he's less than 0.7. The tyres aren't as good as they were. He has more chance of staying in DRS range than he would have had in the opening couple of the laps. So I regard that as not being, a bad sport, but being strategic. Because this time around, Deku is going to get DRS as Oates does the fastest lap of 118.814. But look, Deku's able to just close right in courtesy of DRS. I always think it's a good strategy. Sure, look, if you're battling for, 8th or 9th and a guy comes out on brand new softs and you're on 14-lap old hards, pointless. You're actually just going to compromise your race. But because Deku is the race leader, I think that puts it in another level. Yeah, another perspective, yeah.
Absolutely, I agree. I think that there are situations where it's better to let them go and just try and stay within DRS, but when the tire delta is this big, when the hards are so much slower than the softs at the same tire range, I think it does make sense to let as Deku goes round, as I'm saying that, Deku unfortunately is just spun on the exit of Aqua Minerale, a bit too eager on the power, maybe just trying to stay within the DRS of Oten, so Deku will have lost a number of positions, and I regret to say he might have rear wing damage because he did whack the barrier quite hard. We saw a few other drivers with rear wing damage, so I think it's pretty obvious he does have damage because his back end is quite squirrely. I don't think that's down to tire temperatures because the spin wasn't that brutal and the hards are quite robust in terms of tire temperature, but I think that's an issue with
he's around again.
Wing. He's around again, so I think he just has no downforce on the back, so he just keeps locking the rears, and I won't be surprised if, unfortunately, we see Deku drive into the pit slap to retire.
Well, that's gut-wrenching for him because he was doing so well up until that point. And that's given Oates a bit of a gap now over VDUX and CSAVs. He's able to start using those softs. Now, it looks like just a tyre change. He's going for the mediums. No front
He has
wing.
retired from the session.
He has retired from the session, and the game continues on with it and brings him back out onto track. And if his AI puts anyone into trouble, what will happen? He will cop a penalty.
Yeah, it is quite unfortunate. I do wish there was a way of ensuring the car does stay in the pits because it does cause havoc for other drivers when a AI controlled car moving at 100 kilometers an hour down a zone where you'd normally be doing 300 is on track. So it's unfortunate. I've seen other people cop penalties for situations like that, which I think is a bit unfortunate, but it's really the only fair way of doing it. So
Yeah,
unfortunately, Deco is out.
and what you say is right. In most of the rules, in most of the leagues that you race in, they do say, by all means use your AI, behind the safety car or whatever. But if your AI damages another car, you are responsible. And in order to maintain that, in situations like we just saw just then, that rule has to apply. Even though it's brutally unfair, it still does have to apply.
Absolutely, because it's just if that AI car were to come out and ruin somebody else's race, and I think it would be unfair to the driver whose race was ruined if no action was taken to try and solve that. So, unfortunately, obviously, I wouldn't like to see drivers retire in the pits, but when the car is undrivable, as Deku just showed, couldn't even make it 3 corners with the wing damage. So,
Yeah.
when you're in that situation, it's a bit harsh. But there's really not much we can do about it. Hopefully, Codemasters and EA, the F122 overlords, can see that and make some sort of change to the coding to see if we can keep the car in the pits if you retire before a certain time. GR Viking is getting out of the way. He is being lapped at the moment, so
Oh,
good
gee.
blue flag behavior.
You don't see that very often. Viking being
No.
lapped. You do not see that. He's usually extremely competitive, but it gives you an idea of how bad his luck is going today as we go back under race conditions. V-Ducks in second, CSAVs, then A-Lock, DJ Millsy. See what I mean about Millsy? He's still there, fighting the good fight. He's on slightly older mediums than any other medium runner out there, but he's staying in the game. There was a saying back in the days of doing commentary for V8 supercars, where a boy, if you talk to any of the drivers at Bathurst, they all had the same opinion, that Bathurst was really about buying a ticket to the last 1 hour of the race. And you know me, you've engineered for me before. You know that that's pretty much my strategy in every race now. Don't go out and fight for every corner like a madman. Just buy a ticket to the last 10 laps of the race and then see what your car's got, because it always seems to pay massive dividends when you take care of your car and just concentrate on looking after your tyres, saving your fuel, and just getting into a flow.
Absolutely. I think that's my preferred way of driving. Just forgetting about the first 99% of the race and just focusing on that last lap. You just want to get to that last lap because the end of that last lap is where the race classification comes from, and that's where the points are scored. So I think in terms of real life driving styles, I think Bathurst drivers have it absolutely correctly because it's a long race. It's a very, very, how should I say, it's a very tiring race, so to say. So if you can keep alert, if you can keep focus on it, and if you can get to the end of the race, you're already there already halfway to the point of being able to fight for the positions you want. So
Kind of like the strategy of the McLaren pilot of Oaten's. Oaten's has just come in now. He came off those soft and he's put on a set of mediums, which should take him to the checkered flag. 16 laps he needs to do on those, and he's going to have plenty of grip over the hard-running runners. Plus, the other medium runners, they've now used their mediums. They have got a choice of either going to a hard or a soft, which won't make it to the end. He might be on a winning strategy here, this man. And Hickey
I
Cat's done
do think
exactly the
so.
same.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think the hards will not make it to the end. They did pit on lap, if my math is correct, lap 5. So those hard tires are going to be absolutely screaming towards the end, and I do think they'll be in puncture territory. So there is going to be a second pit stop. The timing of that pit stop is going to be crucial to determining whether you win or lose the race. So I think Oten is on a very good strategy at the moment. I would say net P1 unless any of these hard runners are daring enough to try to take it to the end. We did see Alex Albon around Australia. 57 laps on the hard tire. 57 laps. he pitted because he was required to, not because he needed to. So if you can see such a performance today, I think V Ducks and C Savs could be in for the win if they stay out. So it is going to be difficult for them though if Otens does catch up, if he puts in the lap times on those fresher mediums to catch up. So we'll see what happens. But if I was the front runners at the moment, I'd definitely be considering pitting as soon as possible to cover off the undercut.
Yeah, I was literally about to say the same thing. All of a sudden, C-Savs, who sits there in second, has got a real wriggle on. He's closed right up behind V-Ducks. I'm wondering if he's aware of what Otens has done and now realises it's time to get his mumbo on. They're both sitting on around 50% of their ERS. A-Lock, 80, nearly 90% ERS, finds himself on those 10-lap-old mediums in third spot with DJ Millsy, almost within DRS range of him. So credit to A-Lock.
Yeah, it's a very good performance. I think the battery should be used a tiny bit more, sitting on 95% battery. Of course, it is a bit difficult to recharge around Imola from experience, and not just in this game, but in the previous game, trying to recharge the battery was an absolute pain. So I wouldn't necessarily say A-Log is doing a bad thing by holding onto that battery, but he's not doing himself any good either.
Well,
by not using it,
effectively,
so.
if these front two guys do have to pit, and now they're on 13 odd laps of, as Otens now goes quickest in sixth spot, effectively A-Lock is our race leader, be it 7 seconds off in third spot. And 11 lap old mediums, yeah, sure, he needs to do another pit stop and he's going to need to do it probably within the next 4 laps or so. But he's set himself up to a potential podium finish here. So be interesting to see if he can carry it out.
I think that going to the hards might not be a strategy for A-Log. I think possibly the softs are an option towards the end, so you might want to extend this medium stint and then just go absolutely ham with those soft tires towards the end with the lighter cars. So lighter fuel loads, softer compounds, they will last longer. So softs that go 5 laps at the beginning of the race will be a bit more worn than softs that go 5 laps towards the end of the race. So I think going for the softs is not a bad idea at the moment, especially since you've already lost the advantage. You've already been undercut. So
and pardon me for coughing, everybody. I've still got a little bit of a cold. For those in chat, Facebook user is all I get. So I don't know if that's still you, Rico, or it's somebody else that's calling out Go CSAVs. But he's doing a pretty darn good job at the moment. They were talking about using 164 frames per second. My information is, and where I'd love to get your thoughts on this, I am totally 110% against crossplay, because the frame rate on Xbox and what's the other platform? PlayStation. The frame rate is lower, and the cars can attack the curbs more than you can on a PC. So particularly in Australia, say turn 1, they can just straight line turn 1 there, go straight across the top of the ripple strips and everything, and end up fine. Where if you did that on PC, you would not be looking really well on the exit of the turn. So the idea, my friend, is go down in your frame rates, not up.
Absolutely. So I had a chat with one of my mates who's a game developer, and he explained what's going on. And what's going on in the game is that they code certain performance parameters by frame rate, not time. So I'll interrupt myself. As you see, CSAVs just using the battery to take a position from VDUX. I think they just want to switch around the positions. I think VDUX did use a bit of the battery. I think that what they should do now is just tow each other with the DRS back and forth, because that gains you a lot of time to the car behind in P3. So I think the lead has changed. Not much else going on. I think they're just buying themselves tickets to the last part of the race. But going back to the frame rate issue, the way the game works is that it calculates every single frame of what's going on. So if you have more frames per second, it's able to more accurately detail the car's reaction to the curbs. So if you have less frames, per second, the curbs won't be as harsh as they would be at a higher frame rate. So I did a bit of testing today. I drove at my normal 144 frames per second around Monza. Every single time I went around the turn 1 and 2 curbs, it was just rocket ship. You just get launched into the sky. But taking it down to 30 FPS was like going back a few game cycles where the curbs did basically nothing to the car. So I think it's a very cheeky way of gaining time. I really hope the drivers are not taking advantage of it because I do think it's gaming the system. I'd prefer to see everyone just running at the maximum capabilities of their hardware and fighting it out on track that way. Because once you have drivers that are able to take up differently, it completely changes the playing field. It's no longer equal cars, equal track. It's basically like having a track advantage, should I say so?
But my
Um,
question is, right, if they want cross-play, yet there's such a performance difference in the two, what are they going to do to nobble the the platforms that have that massive advantage? I mean, I'd love to be able to play as Hickey Cat now gets a 3-second penalty for track violations. I'd love to be able to play cross-platform and anybody who's anybody can come in and play. But if there's such a distinct advantage, like it goes back to F1 2021 when we knew controllers at certain tracks had a massive advantage, an unfair advantage over the rest of the pack.
yeah, the issue is the way they calculate the performance is directly linked to how they coded the game. So unfortunately, they'd have to basically recode how certain stuff are calculated, which, as we know, changing massive game mechanics mid-cycle is going to be probably detrimental to the
The whole
overall
system.
experience of the player because
So
you're
in
going to have
short,
bugs.
you can't play cross-play on an even platform.
Unfortunately, yes, unless they remove frame caps. I know the PlayStation 5 and the newer Xboxes have a higher frame rate, so they might not be as susceptible to that issue. But unfortunately, if you do have crossplay on and you do play on a computer rather than a PlayStation or console,
You're
then
at a bit,
you are at a
yeah.
disadvantage. So I,
Well,
I choose to play with it off.
yeah, with while we've been talking about that, now you suggested that CSAVs and VDUX need to work together. CSAVs obviously felt that he had a little bit more pace than VDUX, and he's got out in front, and they've stretched that gap from 7 seconds from to A-Lock out to 11. So this is why the CSAVs didn't want to stay behind and play the work together game. He felt that he had a bit more pace, and it's been 3 seconds in the time it's taken us to talk about the differences in crossplay. So he's absolutely streaking away from it. But right behind him at the same time, DJ Millsy has been able to close up behind A-Lock, and now on lap 22 with 17 lap old medium tyres and about nothing left in his oxygen tank. He's about to place A-Lock under a considerable amount of pressure, and A-Lock still has 71% ERS, so this is going to be an Everest to climb.
Yeah, I think Alok knows that he's under attack, so he's going to be using that battery to try and defend if I could get the camera angle correct. But the slipstream is powerful with the DRS. So into turn one, or turn two rather, as it's officially known, DJ Millsy will get that move done. I think what you're seeing now is DJ Millsy about to make a pit stop because what normally drivers would do is try to make the overtake before the pit stop, so you're guaranteed some sort of position after the pit stop. So I wouldn't be surprised if DJ Millsy pulls in to go into the soft tire. But part of that gap that you see expanding from DJ Millsy and VDUX P2 and 3 is the tire advantage. So
Yeah.
the hards are just so much stronger, so much more intact than the medium. So that explains some of the time gain. However, I did see A-Lock struggling with the tires a few laps ago, just getting a bit of oversteer out of some of the corners, and that's the rear tires going off. So I think they'll be thinking of getting rid of the tires as soon as possible so they can have some sort of grip and hopefully make up a few positions.
Well, all of a sudden, A-Lock has found that push to pass button because he's chewed 40% up in that previous lap, trying to stay with DJ Millsy. Let's see who is going to blink first and come into the pits. We've got around. I wonder if these two medium guys are going to go straight to softs. Well, we're going to find out. Here comes DJ Millsy down to the 180 metre board, and looks like he arrests the car perfectly. Goes in, and softs are going on the car. So he has decided to go all out for the next 8 laps or so and chew up some soft tyres. Now, let's see what our front runners do. We've got Cheeky Otter slowly closing into the back of Oaten's as well. We're back on board with CSAVs at the moment. Your race leader with 19 lap old hards. They would be screaming now.
Yeah, they're not going to be very pretty tires to look at. or drive with. So I called earlier that I'm not sure they can make it to the end. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them pit anytime now. Guys, if you're listening, you might want to pit to not get punctured towards the end of the race. But if they are keeping the tires in, if they do feel comfortable on the tires, they could stay out towards the end. So
Well, both of these guys really pushing track limits at the moment. I saw V-Dux run incredibly wide through the chicane, and I would dare suggest picked up a warning unless he got out of the gas because he was wide. There was no doubt he was over that line. As the Viking once again pulls out of the way, who's having just a shocking race. I don't like to see that for anybody, especially the Viking. I mean, he does so much work behind the scenes in administrative work in this category, along with CSAVs and VDUCs and people like that. You just don't like to see, and they do it because they like to race, not because they want to run a league. They just do it because they like to race, and you want to see them go out there and at least have some fun. But I don't think the Vikings' day would. There'd be plenty of verbs that he would use, but fun would not be one of them.
yeah, it's unfortunate because you just one tiny mistake can ruin the race for you. And once you get lapped, that's it. There's no one lapping in this game, even under safety car. As much as I would love to see that, just have one extra lap where the lap cars get sent through. That would be terrific to have because I've had absolutely nightmare races where I've been lapped because of a few mistakes, and I just want the chance to redeem myself. Just get back in the pack and try and make up some positions. So it
Yeah.
is unfortunate. I think CSAV's last lap, I think that track limit penalty you saw, I think that was an attempt to break DRS because they were briefly outside of that 1 second window. So they might have been pushing to try break DRS, which unfortunately hasn't worked. And once you do those DRS pushes, you end up using a lot of battery, and if it doesn't work, you're left vulnerable. So it's a bit awkward for CSALs right now because they're in a position where they have a time penalty, and they're still, if I'm honest, going wide, getting a few extra track limit warnings. So
I got
uh,
to. Sorry to jump in, Wero. I just a few laps ago, back when we were talking about the frame rate thing, I started to think to myself, would CSAVs and VDUCs be smarter to just stay out on these tyres? Now look at where at lap 26 of 32, they've got a 19-second gap back to Oaten's. They started on mediums, didn't they? So they can only really go softs, which we know are going to wash off quickly. There, there is plausible data to suggest that they should stay out and not, in fact, pit again.
I'll interrupt my response to that. We saw CSABs get a massive snap of oversteer, so those tires might be going off, which opens the door for VDAX with DRS to make a pretty easy textbook pass down the straight. So I think with the tires, they're not really racing anyone behind them on the grid. It's mostly just going to be racing their tire wear at this point because they're going to get into that area where you do get punctures. So 75% and upwards on the tire wear is where you get punctures. So the more tire wear you get, the higher the risk. So if they do get a puncture at this point, it'll be quite awkward because they would have to limp back a couple sectors back into the pits on a
Oh,
damaged tire. You
I,
see A-Lock.
yeah. Isn't that sad? He got a pit lane speeding penalty. He was doing so well. He now goes onto the softs. DJ Millsy's done the same. He's jumped onto the softs. Their strategies are starting to come into play. And unfortunately for A-Lock, just that fraction of a second too late. I had an issue in my final round of another championship I raced in where I came in and I hit the button, but the button didn't engage because it's one that you have to be really firm with, and it's caught me out a few times, and I copped a 5 second penalty, and that was the difference between second and first in the championship effectively. And that's probably stretching the truth just a little bit, but makes it sound so much better. So I can relate. Now, I'm going to contact CSAVs after this and ask him to teach me how to get the back of the car really squirrely, because I'm not entirely convinced that he doesn't want to sit there and save up a little bit of ERS and sit in the slipstream for a little bit and get old mate V-Ducks to do a little bit of the hard yards.
Yeah, I think that's a very good strategy. I think this late into the race, it does make sense to just wait for the last lap. The race is won on the last lap. So sitting back, recharging the battery, and just saving it for end of 31, start of 32 ERS dump
And
It's
cooling
probably
down
the
the
way to go.
tyres.
Absolutely, you cool down the tires, and as we know in this game, tire temperatures are very important. So if you do get very hot surface temperatures, very hot carcass temperatures, you will have a very bad time trying to keep the car on the road, and you will get more tire wear. So keep cooling the tires, recharging the battery, and then just saving up for that lap 31 dash.
And Oates is not closing that gap. He's brought it down by half a second on this lap as these two do battle. Now CSAVs has another go at VDUX and goes through and is going to come across, pick up the racing line. That just looked at... No, these guys are working with each other, I think, here. I really think they're working with each other because that was a little bit too easy.
Yeah, if you ever look at their battery levels, they're basically equal. CSAVs has you just 10% down this main straight, maybe to tow VDUX along. But I think they have similar batteries. They're just working together to get to the end of the race. I think CSAVs knows that they're not going to win this race with their time penalty, unfortunately. So they're being responsible and just trying to get a bunch of race time. And maybe you might see them just have a bit of a race at the end for fun, even though the time penalty is there. But these are very calm, very composed drivers.
Oh, yeah. Very, very skillful at their craft. So, with a couple of laps left to go, it is CSAVs leading VDUX. Then we go back to Oates. Cheeky Otter still in the fight in the Ferrari, albeit 13 seconds behind Oates. And on those hards, should be able... 23 lap old hards. I was going to say should be able to close that gap, but I'm not so sure. DJ Millsy, 7 seconds further down the road now, 6.9. He's on softs that have done 5 laps. Right behind him, his rival for this race, A-Lock, who is now out on 2-lap-old softs. Then we go back to Hickey Cat. Ronaldinho still in the fight in the Haas. And the Viking having a torrid time. I'm not even going to put him on screen. He doesn't. I know he won't want to see any of this.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those races where you just want it to end. 32 laps is a long time to be in a race. So when you've had one like this, you just want every lap to end because every lap just feels longer than the last. Whereas that might be literally true. It just the psychological aspect of just doing lap after lap, knowing that you're not going to gain or lose anything is just it's borderline torture because you know that there's not much else you can do.
Well, 2 laps left to go, and CSAVs all of a sudden has got a wriggle on. He's almost broken this DRS. He's using all of his nitrous oxide, the ERS, to try and break this. It's 9.93 at the moment. Starts the run up the hill, gets a beautiful launch through that section of the track. And VDUX, what's he doing with his ERS? Yep, he's using every bit of it as he can to try and stay in touch. Gets a little bit of understeer through the second part of the chicane, but it hasn't cost him a great deal in time. He's maintained the gap and will get DRS this time around. So CSAV's running out of time to try and get that 3-second gap that's required in order to take victory here. And still, the gap back to Oates, 19.8. They've kept it around the 20-second mark.
Yeah, these guys are working together. They know the race it's up here, so back there. So they're not too worried about what's going on behind them. I just think it's incredible to see how long they've set out on those tires. If they do watch this back and they hear me telling them to pit repeatedly, saying that they're not going to make it, you proved me wrong, guys, and that's absolutely great because I like to be proved wrong because I didn't think the hards would be able to make it this long. Looking at the tires, I can see a bit of simulated graining. So the simulations, the graphics in the game are accurate enough so you can tell when the tires are going a bit off. So good job to the drivers for making it this far. I'm pretty sure that they would be on 60-70% wear. So good job for keeping it on the track and taking it this far.
And
a lot of the other drivers have not made it that far.
And speaking of which, big credit to Oates, 15 laps on those mediums. They're at the point of not being very happy tyres at the moment too, and that'd be a full-time occupation trying to keep that McLaren on track and not break track limits. And so far, he's got no penalties, so I say GG to him.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great work. And we look now at VDUX going down the main straight. He's going to try and use the battery, but I think the gap is just a bit too big, even with the DRS and slipstream, to get CSAVs. So if CSAVs can pull off a masterclass of a sector and try and pull up, I think it's a 3-second gap required to get the win. I think Vidax will have the win in the bag. All they have to do is just make it to the end. It is the last lap here in GR Schumaker series. The race has been pretty spread out. A lot of the field is not together, but Vidax and CSAPs have kept it in each other the entire time.
Did you see the back of V-Duck's car there? He is dead set racing on ice at the moment. And that graining you were talking about on his rear tyres, it almost looks like he's wearing one of those old-fashioned pants, corduroy pants. Is it corduroy? It's what the rear tyres look like at the moment. They're just absolutely shot. But he's only got a couple more turns to go. CSAVs couldn't break the gap, but we know how janky this game can be from time to time, and you don't know if that time penalty is going to be removed by the stewards following the race. Let's assume, and we'll just go with what comes up on the board, it's going to be a victory for V-Ducks, because CSAVs will be relegated back to second, but either way, an outstanding job by them both. Speeding in pit lane for Ronaldinho, he's got a 5-second slap across the wrist as well. So V-Ducks, CSAVs, then we go back to Otens on those mediums, 16-lap old mediums. That is a gigantic performance from him. Well done to Otens. That's a really good job to bring that car home in third spot, and he just torches the rear tyres as he does so. DJ Millsy, once again, this time missing out on a podium spot, but a very respectable fourth, and picks up very valuable championship points. He had a great little dice as he comes down across the line with this man, A-Lock, finishing in fifth spot on those soft tyres. Kept his nose clean. Cheeky Otter with a time penalty as well. There he is, and looks like he may have had he's got a puncher. Right rear puncher on board the Ferrari, and I dare say his teammate might be close enough to give him a bit of a shake. Oh, and he's around too. He's around and in the dirt, and I think he may be beached. Is he? No, he gets it going, but Ronaldinho and the Viking has gone round him, but he's going to be able to limp down across the line. I don't think Ronaldinho is going to be able to catch him. He's too far back, and Cheeky Otter is glad his days. I think his teammate just let him go past and take the spot. Well done. What great teamsmanship from those two.
Yeah, that's a great gesture from the Ferrari team. But a puncture on 26-lap tires, I think I did say earlier on that punctures were likely, so that just shows how the front runners, CSAVs and VDOX, how well they kept their tires in, Nick, because they didn't suffer from the puncture. So it's a risk that the drivers knew was going to be there, and they chose to take it, and it worked for them. But unfortunately for the Ferrari, it didn't work out. So it's a bit painful towards the end. I wish we'd have seen all three hard runners make it towards the end. I'm not sure if you can see, but it started raining just as the races ended. So it's been quite an interesting race today here in GR Racing. The points tally, remember there is a sprint race, there was a feature race, so the points will be interesting to look at in terms of the championship. So we'll wait for the stewards' review on the incidents and any penalties, and then we'll have a look at the championship.
I'm just bringing up, those penalties have come up this time around, so I'm flicking through for anybody that wants to take a screenshot to take to the stewards. CSAVs, he won't, look, 1, 2, 3, then the fourth one. So I dare say he's going to have trouble getting rid of that. Has he had any others? No, he hasn't had any others. So, and this is where the pit stops happened. Intermediates, etc., 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 etc. But race victory to V-Ducks over CSAVs, Otens, DJ Millsy, A-Lock, Cheeky Otter, Hickey Cat, Ronaldinho, and the Viking having how many pit stops? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pit stops for him. And as you say, it's now raining. The cars get a nice wash. My friend Werribot, thank you so much for joining us in commentary. Always great fun to be able to catch up with you.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here in GR. It's my first time commentating, and hopefully not the last.
Well, we're here each Sunday, everybody, and don't forget, we have racing on Tuesday, Wednesday, and the Schumaker Series runs twice a week, 9 o'clock on Thursday, Australian Eastern Standard Time, and 9 o'clock on Sunday. That's going to wrap up our coverage for tonight. Thank you very much for popping along. DJ Millsy, good to see you in the chat. Rico Nosberg, always great to see you. Well done to the victors here this weekend, and we'll look forward to catching up with you next time.